Hello and good noon, everyone. Hope you're doing well and great. Today I'm going to talk about how to turning active into the passive voice, and there are some rules for changing of active into the passive voice. So I hope that this video be useful for everyone and can understand everyone what I'm explaining here. So. Uh, The topic that I'm going to talk about it today, it is turning off active into the passive voice. باشه همه دوستای عزیز بخیر، امید است که جور و صحتمند و سر حال باشین. تاپیکی که امروز مورد بحث ما قرار میگیرد تبدیل کردن زمان معلوم به زمان مجهول است. یعنی ما چطور میتونیم یک زمان مجهول معلوم به مجهول تبدیل بکنیم و در کجا ما میتونیم از زمان مجهول استفاده بکنیم. زمان معلوم واضح است دوست عزیز که در موارد بیشتر در نوشته ها، در مقالات و در کنورسیشن های روزانه یعنی daily conversation ما استفاده میکنیم. So I would like to explain for you guys, and it is mentionable that this video is actually recorded for students of interchange level 2 who are studying interchange level 2, and this issue is discussed in unit 11 of interchange level 2. So I would like that this video be useful for those who are watching us and for those who will watch. Don't forget to subscribe our channel and be with us. We'll cover different issue with you guys. So passive, what is a passive verb? Passive is a verb where the receiver of the action is the subject of the sentence. در کل اگر ما بیایم بالای زمان مجهول صحبت بکنیم، زمان مجهول چی است؟ زمان مجهول یعنی فعلی است یا زمان مجهول زمانی است که گیرنده عمل به صفت فاعل یا در آغاز جمله استفاده می شود. We have an example here, such or example, the rooms are painted. So in here, the room is what? The rooms are painted. Whenever we talk or we say that the rooms are painted, وقتی که ما مثلا میگیم که اتاقها رنگ شده است, in here someone has painted the room. If we write down the active form of this sentence, how we can write? So we can write down Ahmad paints the room. So this is simple present tense. Ahmad paints the room. Ahmad اتاقها را رنگ می کند. When we change it into the passive voice, we bring the rooms at the beginning of the sentence. We'll come to it then. بالای موضوع بعداً میایم هم که چطور قواعدش هست. How we can use. We'll study the rules and I will explain one by one for you. But I want to clarify from the beginning for you that how this sentence changed. دوست عزیز ما میخوایم واضح بسازم که چطور این جمله در اینجا تغییر کرده است، یعنی چطور این جمله تبدیل شده. So the rooms احمد paints the rooms. احمد اتاقها را رنگ میکند. So whenever we change it into the passive voice, the rooms are painted. اتاقها رنگ شده. So let me to come to the next part. Here I have a memo or a note for you guys. It is mentionable that we cannot change the intransitive verbs into passive because they do not have any object. When we have transitive verbs and another is intransitive verbs, یکی افعال انتقالی داریم، یکی افعال غیر انتقالی داریم. یعنی یکی فعل ترانزیتیو داریم، یکی فعل غیر ترانزیتیو داریم. فعل ترانزیتیو یا فعل انتقالی ما, transitive verbs are those verbs that they get an object, or we use an object after the transitive verbs. افعال انتقالی افعالی هستند که بعد از فعل ما یک مفعول افزود میکنیم. But in transitive verb we do not add any object at the end of them. مگر در افعال غیر انتقالی ما افزود کردن نمیتونیم. For example, I go to Kabul every morning. من هر صبح کابل میرم. This is what? This This is the example of intransitive verb. This is unchangeable. We cannot change it. So we cannot say that قابل is so it is unchangeable. We cannot change it. This is intransitive verb. I mean that the verb go is intransitive verb. What should we do whenever we would like to change an active into the passive voice? There are some rules and regulations that we have to obey from those rules. I mean, we have to observe those rules for changing of active into the passive voice. The following points must be observed in the passive sentence. نکات ذیل باید رعایت گردد در تغییر دادن یک جمله معلوم به مجهول. The first rule is that study the active sentence and clarify its tense. Someone may ask that why is it important? Today I was teaching this for one of my classes, and one of my students, the teacher, is it very important that we should clarify the tense? Yes. Whenever we clarify the tense, whenever we determine the tense, so we understand that what should we do in the passive voice, or how we should change it into the passive voice. در یکی از صنف‌های امروز قسمی که من تدریس داشتم، یکی از شاگردای میره پرسان کرد که استاد آیا مهم است که ما زمان اول مشخص بکنیم که کدام زمان است؟ بله. موقعی که ما زمان مشخص بکنیم، برای ما واضح میشه که ما کدام قواعد یا کدام مقررات ما باید در او زمان تطبیق بکنیم، از کدام قواعد از کدام نکات ما در شکل پاسیفش استفاده کرده میتونیم. I can say for you guys that there are two types of rules for changing of active into the passive voice. به خاطر تبدیل کردن زمان معلوم و مجهول دو قواعد میتونیم بگیم هستن. یکی قواعد once we have general rules that will apply for all the tenses. یکی ما قواعد عام داریم یا قواعد عمومی است که به تمام زمان ها میتونیم تطبیق بکنیم، یعنی در کل ما میتونیم در نظر بگیریم. Once the second one is we can say specific rules that we have for specific tenses. یکی قواعد مشخص تری است که برای زمان ها به شکل مشخص. For example, if we change a simple present tense into the passive voice, we use from is or am. But whenever we would like to change a simple past tense into the passive voice, we have to change is or am to was and were. We have to use from the second form of to be verb. So in present continuous tense, we have to add an extra being. So these are the specific rules that apply with the specific tenses. قواعد مشخص‌تر قسمی که ما براتون دوستای عزیز به انگلیسی بیان کردیم اینجا، مثلا قواعد عام گفتیم در عموم از به تمام زمان‌ها میتونیم ما تطبیق بکنیم، و قواعد مشخص‌تر مثلا زمان گذشته صادر وقتی که ما زمان حال صادر وقتی که ما تبدیل میکنیم به شکل پسیو، قاعده ای است که از is or am استفاده بکنیم. مگر وقتی که ما زمان گذشته صادر تبدیل میکنیم به شکل پسیو، was is or am change into was and were. is or am ما با was and were تبدیل میکنیم و در زمانهای جاری مثلا being افزود علاوه میکنیم یا یک being اضافگی افزود میکنیم و در زمانهای کامل از been استفاده میکنیم. So these are the specific rules that we can apply for specific tenses. بنابراین قواعد مشخص‌تری است که ما میتونیم به زمانهای مشخص‌تر چه کنیم، ما تطبیق بکنیم. قانون سوم ما چی است؟ change. قانون دوم ما باشیم. change the place, the second rule or the second step, change the place of subject, change the place of object to subject. We bring the object at the beginning of the sentence. ما جای مفعول به فاعل تبدیل میکنیم، یعنی مفعول ما را از ختم جمله در آغاز جمله میاریم. The third rule is use a to be verb according to the tense of active sentence. یک فعل بودن مطابق به جمله ما یا مطابق به جمله زمان ما استفاده میکنیم. As I mentioned earlier, قسمی که قبلتر یا پیشتر من ذکر کردم، به گونه مثال ما در زمان حال ساده is or am، در زمان گذشته was were، در زمانهای دیگه همین قسم دیگه شکل فعل بودن ما استفاده میکنیم. خب در قانون چهارم ما چی میکنیم؟ در قانون چهارم هم ما میتونیم از بعضی موارد دیگر هم استفاده بکنیم، یعنی قانون چهارم ما متفاوت‌تر است. قانون چهارم ما use from past participle form of the verb after the verb to be. So we use the third form of the verb or the past participle form of the verb in the passive voice after the to be verb. در شکل مجهول بعد از فعل بودن ما از چی استفاده میکنیم؟ از حالت same فعل استفاده میکنیم. Rule number 5. The subject pronouns are changed to object and the object pronouns are changed to subject. We change the subject to object and object to subject. Number 6. In all progressive verbs, an extra being is added. Add after the to be verb. در تمام زمانهای جاری ما یک فعل بودن یک being اضافگی یعنی افزود میکنیم. بعد از چی؟ بعد از فعل بودن ما اگر is or am می باشه یا was were می باشه ما یک being اضافگی را بعد از او افزود میکنیم. Number 7. At the end of the sentence, it is possible to mention the door of the action after preposition by. So, قابل تذکر است یا قابل یادآوری است که در ختم جمله ما انجام دهنده عمل بعد از فعل بودن بعد از حرف اضافه پای ما چی بکنیم؟ افزود ذکر بکنیم. اگر خواسته باشیم اگر نخواسته باشیم ما نیازی هم نیست که ما ذکر بکنیم. خب میم در مرحله بعدی ما چی داریم؟ Using the passive voice. موارد به کاربرد پسیو. شاید سوالی باشه. There are maybe questions that why we use from the passive voice. شاید سوالاتی باشه که ما چرا از شکل مجهول استفاده میکنیم. خب دوست عزیز گفته میتونیم که از شکل پسیو ما چرا استفاده میکنیم؟ When the actor or the door of an action is unknown or not necessary to mention the door of an action. موقعی که گرداننده یا انجام دهنده عمل بر ما واضح نباشه و یا هم نیاز به ذکر انجام دهنده عمل نباشه یعنی نیاز به ذکر نام یا به ذکر انجام دهنده عمل نباشه ما میتونیم از شکل پسیو چی بکنیم؟ استفاده بکنیم. Look at the example. She was, oh my God. She was kidnapped. او خانم چه شد؟ ربوده شد. She was kidnapped. او خانم ربوده شد. So, in here the kidnappers are not clear for us. در اینجا ربایندگان بر ما او دخترک یا او طفل چه شد؟ ربوده شد. در اینجا رباینده ها بر ما واضح نیست که کی عمل انجام داده. So, we use from the in here we use from the passive voice. در این موارد ما میتونیم از شکل پسیو استفاده بکنیم. Whenever the door is not clear for us. موقعی که انجام دهنده بر ما واضح نباشه. So if the door is clear for us, so we can mention the name. Or if we would like to hide the door of the action, so we say that she was kidnapped. But in here still the door is not clear for us. Or if it is clear but we do not want to mention the door of the action, so we use from this form. I mean, we do not mention by blah blah, by someone else. The second rule, when we have forgotten the door of an action or when we want to hide the door of an action, موقعی که ما فراموش کرده باشیم که کی عمل انجام داده یا هم پنهان خواسته باشیم بکنیم. The store was thieved. مغازه سرقت شده است یا دزدی شده است. Still, we do not know or we forgot who has thieved the store. یا ما فراموش کرده باشیم و یا هم ما پنهان کرده باشیم که کی ربوده یا کی سرقت کرده است مغازه را میتونیم از این شکل ما استفاده بکنیم. The third usage of the passive voice is that when it is not important to mention the door of the action as it's obvious who he or she is. موقعی که مهم نباشد ذکر انجام دهنده عمل در شکل پسیو. یعنی موقعی که ما نخواسته ذکرش نامش چی نباشد مهم نباشد ما ذکر بکنیم و از قبل بر ما واضح باشد که کی عمل انجام داده پس ما میتونیم که چی بکنیم از شکل پسیو استفاده بکنیم. Look at the example here. In here this example is very clear, I'm sure that if we say that the patients were carefully cured for 3 years. So The patients were carefully cured for 3 years. It is clear or it's obvious for us that the patients were carefully cured for 3 years by doctors. So in here it is not necessary to mention the door of the action. در اینجا قابل ذکر است که یعنی در حقیقتش برای ما مهم نیست که مثلا ما ذکر بکنیم، چون از قبل کلگی میفهم وقتی که ما بگویم مثلا whenever we say that look at this example, the patients were carefully cured for 3 years. مریضان مدت 3 سال معالجه شدن. طبیعی است در ذهن هر کس میگه که دکتر است که مریض معالجه میکنه. It's clear that doctors just cure the patient. So it is not necessary to mention in here the door of the action. واضح است که ذکر نام دکتر اینجا مهم نیست. What kind of text has passive sentence or where we can use the passive voice؟ چه قسم جملات یا چه قسم محاوره ها میتونه که مثلا شکل پاسیو داشته باشه؟ An academic text will usually have a mixture of active and passive sentence. نوشته های اکادمیک یا علمی معمولا داشتن جملات اکتیو و پاسیو را دارند در خود. یعنی نوشته های علمی یا متن های علمی یا متن علمی از هر دو جملات اکتیو و مجهول اکتیو و پاسیو داره هستند، یعنی جملات معلوم و مجهول در خود دارند. So we have to notice important things. بنان لازم میدانیم که باید این نکات ارزنده و مؤثر ما به یاد داشته باشیم. So whenever we are talking or whenever we want to change into the passive voice, here I have a table for changing of active into the passive voice. If we have simple present tense, we change simple present tense into the passive. So we have in the simple present tense, we have what? We have subject plus verb plus verb plus complement or object. So we can write down object or complement. So whenever we want to change it into the passive voice, so we have to follow this structure. We have to be is or am. To be means is or am plus past participle. Look at the example. Ahmad broke. Oh my God! Ahmad broke the chair. Ahmad چوکی را شکستانده. احمد چوکی را چی کرده؟ شکستانده. broke. So I have to add an S in here. Ahmad, oh my God. Ahmad teach the class. Ahmad teach the class. Ahmad صنف را تدریس میکنه. teach the class. Class. Ahmad صنف را تدریس میکنه. So whenever we would like to change it into the passive voice, so we have to, the first thing that we do in here, we have to clarify the tense. This is simple present tense. اولین کاری که اینجا ما میکنیم باید این زمان رو مشخص بسازیم که کدام زمان است. So this is Ahmad the subject, we have teach is the verb, and then we have what? We have object or complement. So the class is what? The class in here, what? It is an object. So Ahmad's the doer of an action, teaches the verb that Ahmad do this verb, and the receiver is what? The class, the students or the receiver. Whenever we would like to change it into the passive voice, we write down what? The class. We bring the class at the beginning of our sentence. We change the place of subject into object. کار که ما اینجا میکنیم جای مفعول و جای فاعل میاریم. class در آخر جمله در آغاز جمله میاریم. The class is. So the class is singular. We write down is. We use from here. We use from to be. So we use to be. To be is in here what? Is. When we say is a to be verb. So after that we write down what? The third form of what? Teach. We write down what? Taught. The class is taught. So the class is taught. It is clear. Who has taught the class? The class taught by the teacher. Ahmad is the teacher. So we can mention the doer of an action after the preposition by. The class is taught by Ahmad. In here we can mention the doer of an action after preposition by. So this is the first. This is the rules that how we can change. Here I have another example. He calls me. I'm called by him. As I mentioned earlier in the rules that we change subject pronoun into object pronoun. In here we have subject قسمی که قبلا ذکر کردیم که ضمایر فاعلی را به مفعولی تبدیل میکنیم. We have here subject pronoun. ما اینجا ضمایر فاعلی داریم. He calls me. او به ما تماس میگیرد. he calls me او به من تماس میگیرد یا زنگ میزند. I, so we change it what? We change me, we change what? Me into what? Into I. Into I. We change the subject into object. This is, we change object into subject. Me is the object in here in this sentence. Me is what? Me is an object. So we change it into what? Into the subject pronoun. Subject is what? Me. The subject pronoun of me is I. I. Then we have a to be verb. As I mentioned earlier, then we have what? A to be verb. And after that, we have the third form of the verb. This is the third form of the verb. So when we say him is what? Him is in here. It was, he calls me. So it is the subject. So we bring it at the end of our sentence. I am called by him. So how we can change it, the simple past tense? This is the structure for the simple past tense. He called me. So whenever we would like to change a simple past tense into the passive voice, we change again me to I. Then we add is, was, and were. So I is singular. In here we use what? Was instead of were, or we instead of is or am, because it is simple past tense. Then the third form of the verb, and him. I was called by him. So simple future tense. What we do in simple future tense? This is the simple future tense sentence. He will call me. So whenever we would like to change it into the passive voice, we use, if we have shall and will, so we write down shall and will. If we have be going to, we have two structure for the simple future tense. One we have subject shall and will, the other one is be going to. Going to. So we can use from this structure. He'll call me. I will be. We use what? We didn't use in here is or and was and were. And in the passive form of future tense, we use what? Be. I will be called by him. I will be called by him. من توسط او تماس گرفته خواهم شد. یا او به من تماس گرفته است. So, present progressive tense زمان حال جاری. How we can change the present progressive tense? He is calling me. او ما زنگ میزند یا او به من تماس میگیرد. This is present continuous tense. We use the structures here very clear. We have to be verb is or am, and then we have what? Then we have an extra being, as I mentioned earlier in the roles, that we have an extra being. Then we have the past participle form of the verb. He is calling me. I am being called by him. I am being called by him. So this is the passive voice that we use in here, an extra being after the verb to be. We bring it here in the structure. So if we have the past progressive tense, what we will do? The past progressive tense also very clear for us. We have he was calling me. He was calling me. So whenever we would like to change it into the passive voice, we have to be verb. To be verb is in here in the past continuous tense was and verb. We have what? Being. Again, we have an extra being here. As I mentioned earlier, that we have to add an extra being in the continuous tenses, so we had an extra being, and then we have the third form of the verb. He was calling me. I was being called by him. I was being called by him. So this is the past. This is the passive form of the past continuous tense. Future progressive tense. What we will do in the future progressive tense? This structure, we have to consider this structure whenever we would like to change a future continuous tense into the passive voice. He will be calling me. I will be. So we have be again in here. Be is to be verb. This is an extra being that we, as I mentioned earlier, that we have to add an extra being in all progressive tense. So this is a future progressive tense. He will be calling. He will be being called by him. So we have to obey this structure. Present perfect tense. So we have he has called me. So have has plus been plus past participle. I have been called by him. I have been called by him. So we use what? The to be verbs in here. What? Been, the third form. Past participle form. Past perfect tense. زمان گذشته کامل. So what structure do we have to? We have had plus been plus participle. Look at the example. He had called me. He had called me. I had been called by him. I had been called by him. So this is the past perfect tense. Future perfect tense, will plus have plus been plus past participle. He will have called me. He'll have called me. I will have been called by him. Look how we have changed it. We use will in here as we have in the structure will. Here we have will as well. So then we have itself, and then we have then we have the third form of the verb called. Present perfect tense. One thing that I would like to mention here for you guys، چیزی که بسیار مهم است من میخوایم اینجا تذکر بکنم یا ذکر بکنم دوستای عزیز، او عبارت از این است که اگر ما یک قاعده را یاد بگیریم، if we understand one rules, if we understand one tense, that how we change it into the passive voice, be sure that we'll have the ability to change all the tenses if we memorize the structure. در صورتی که ما ساختارها را از یاد کرده باشیم یا ساختارها در ذهن ما باشه که چطور مثلا ما زمان حال تبدیل کنیم، زمان گذشته ساختار چی، زمان حال چطور است، زمان آینده چطور است، زمان جاری چطور است، کامل چطور است، کامل جاری، آینده چطور است، آینده جاری چطور است، چه قسم یعنی ما میتونیم تبدیل بکنیم، یا گذشته کامل چطور است، گذشته کامل جاری چه قسم ساختار داره. دقیقاً فراموش نکنیم که ما تمام قواعد یاد میگیریم. So you have to practice a lot the simple present tense. Whenever you practice simple present tense, changing into the passive voice, active into the passive voice, so be sure that you will be able to change the active sentence into the passive voice for all tenses. به خاطر داشته باشین که موقعی که شما یک زمان یاد بگیرین، تمام زمانها را قادر به ازمی باشین که تبدیل بکنین. He has been calling me. I have been being. I have been being. Look at the structure. This structure is very complicated, I am sure. این ساختار بسیار مغلق است به نظر. من مطمئن هستم. We have has, we have been, we have what, we have being, and we have what, we have being. We have being and extra being, as I mentioned earlier in the past participle. I have been being called by him. The passive form of this tense is not more common. So this is not formal. This we cannot use from this passive voice generally. So it is not necessary to just focus on this, that how we should change a present perfect progressive tense into the passive voice. So be sure that it is not very common. Past perfect tense. We have for the past perfect tense had plus been plus being plus past participle. He had been calling me. I had been being called by him. So the passive form of this tense is not more common as well. This is not also more common. I mean that we did not use from the passive form of these tense more. So there will be some text that may contain from these tenses and the passive form, but try to consider, try to know that how we change your day. Someone may ask you that how we should change the active sentence of past perfect progressive tense into the passive voice. So you have to memorize this. You have to know this, that how we should change it. Future perfect progressive tense. Well, have plus been plus being plus participle. Past participle. He will have been calling me. Oh, he will have been calling me. I will have been being called by him. I will have been being called by him. The passive form of this tense is also not more common. There are 3 or 4 tenses: the past perfect, the future perfect, past perfect continuous tense, future perfect continuous tense, that using the passive voice of these tenses are not more common. So it is not very necessary to focus on changing of these tenses into the passive voice, but I recommend for everyone to consider the other tenses and practice these tenses as well. They should change some tenses, and they should change some sentence into the passive voice for these tenses as well. Imperative sentence, jumalat amriya. What we should do in imperative sentence? What are the rules that we have to consider in imperative sentence? We have also imperative sentence that we have to observe the rules for the imperative sentence as well. We have to imperative passive voice. یعنی ما دو شکل مجهول امری داریم. Affirmative imperative passive voice اولش چی هست؟ جملات مثبت یا بیانیه امریه های مثبت هستند. We have noun, pronoun plus be plus past participle. We have these things. Write the essay. نوشته بکنین چی را؟ مقاله را. This is a positive sentence. So let the essay be written. بگذارین که مقاله نوشته شود. So this is the passive form, affirmative, imperative, passive. So this is what, this is that we use from what? We use from let. Let the essay be written. Let the essay be written. And we have in here what? Other. We can also use from the object pronoun as well, as you saw in the first sentence. قسمی که شما در جمله اول مورد noun or pronoun، قسمی که در اینجا گفتم ما میتونیم noun داشته باشیم یا pronoun داشته باشیم. اگر noun بود مثلا noun ما چی است در جمله ما؟ noun در جمله ما essay است. Essay is the noun. So whenever we would like to change it into the pronoun, we use instead of essay what? It. وقتی که مثلا ما خواسته باشیم به جای اسم ما ضمیرش استفاده بکنیم، essay مقاله ما چی میشه؟ it استفاده میکنیم، ضمیرش هست. let it be written. let it be written. بگذاریم که او چی شود؟ نوشته شود. So this is the passive form of when we have a pronoun. Look at the second example. Stand up. Imperative. Let yourself stand up. Let yourself stand up. This is the passive voice of this. Advised, asked, recommended, begged, requested, implored, and ordered. Plus to plus verb express affirmative. Orders, request, and comment in passive voice. این افعالی که ذکر کردم مانند advised, asked, commanded, begged, requested, implored, and ordered. این افعال با فعل to plus verb. To plus verb is, you know, I'm sure that it is infinitive form of the verb. So express affirmative orders. درخواست های چی را بیان میکنن بر ما؟ درخواست های مثبت را بیان میکنن. یعنی درخواست مثبت میتونیم بگوییم، فرمان مثبت میتونیم بگوییم، بر ما بیان میکنن. اینو مطلب ادوایس، نصیحت کردن یا مشوره دادن است، درخواست کردن، کامندت فرمان دادن، بگه تقاضا کردن، ریکوستت هم تقاضا کردن، امپلورت درخواست کردن، اوردرت فرمان دادن. اینا رو وقتی که ما داشته باشیم با فعل تو پلس ورب میتونیم استفاده بکنیم. اینا چی رو بیان میکنن؟ اکسپرس. بیانگر چی هستن؟ بیانگر express affirmative orders. فرمان های مثبت بیان میکنن، request مثبت، فرمان مثبت هم میتونیم ما چی بگوییم؟ بیان میکنن. مثلا active voice help the needy people. افراد بی بضاعت را یا نیازمند را شما کمک بکنید. So whenever we change it, you are begged to help the needy people. از شما تقاضا می شود که افراد نیازمند را شما چی بکنید؟ کمک بکنید. Please study your lesson. لطفاً دروس خود شما مطالعه بکنید. You are requested to study your lesson. از شما تقاضا می شود تا دروس خود را مطالعه بکنید. Negative imperatives آخرین درس ما هستند. در آخرین قسمت درس ما که یعنی به negative imperative همریه های منفی هستند. Late plus object یعنی مفعول ما میتونن noun, it could be a noun, it could be a pronoun plus past participle. Don't smoke cigarette دود نکنید. Negative imperative همریه منفی است. We see this sentence in buses, in common places, in hospital, and somewhere also. In the hospital and somewhere else. So, don't smoke cigarette. Cigarette شما نکشید. Let the cigarette not be a smoker. cigarette نکشید. یعنی اگر ما ترجمه بکنیم let the cigarette not be a smoker. بگذارید سیگرت دود نشود. یعنی شما سیگرت نکشید. پس میتونیم مو ترجمه را برش داشته باشیم. So, this is there is another note for it. These verbs advised, asked, commanded, begged, requested, implored. Again, those verbs plus not plus to. We have not and to. Don't drive fast. You are advised not to drive fast. In here, we do not mention the verb do. Again, you are advised to not drive. You are advised not to drive fast. به شما مشوره میگردد که سریع رانندگی نکنید. Don't write on the book. در کتاب نوشته نکنید. You are begged not to write on the book. از شما تقاضا میگردد که در کتاب نوشته نکنید. Interrogative sentence جملاتی که سوالی میباشند چه قسم ما تبدیل میکنیم؟ Do you perform the chore؟ آیا شما کارتان انجام دادین؟ کار روزمره خود یا کار فعالیتتان انجام دادین؟ Is the chore performed by you? So we change to the verb into to be verb. Do you perform the chore? Is the chore performed by you? Does she bring the letters? آیا خانم نامه ها را میارد؟ Are the letters brought by her? آیا نامه ها آورده شده توسط او؟ Did you repair the freezer? آیا شما میگه فریزر را ترمیم کردین؟ Was the freezer repaired by you? So we have did, we change it into was. Who has invited you? This is the perfect tense. By whom have you been invited? شما را کی دعوت کرده است؟ از شما دعوت کی کرده است؟ میتونیم برش بگوییم. So whom did you see last night? شب گذشته شما کی را دیدید؟ Who was seen last night? Who was seen last night by you? شما شب گذشته کی را دیدید؟ What is he doing now? او حالا چی میکند؟ What is being done by him now? چی کار داره او انجام میدهد؟ یا چی کار داره او انجام داده است؟ Why had you performed the chore? Why had the chore been performed? These are related to different tenses. اینا مرتبط به زمانهای متفاوت هستند. مثلا ما زمان حال را دیدیم، زمان گذشته را دیدیم، زمان کامل را دیدیم، زمان جاری را دیدیم، زمان آینده را دیدیم. Where do you find her? از کجا شما او را پیدا میکنید؟ Where is he found? و از کجا پیدا شد؟ So this is W question. Must I meet her when we have an auxiliary verb? Must I meet her? Must she be met by me? Must she be met? Must she be met by me? باید او با من ملاقات باید او را من ملاقات کنم یا باید او توسط من ملاقات میشد. So this is what this is a passive form of all these verbs and tenses. I hope that this session were useful for you guys and you got something from my presentation and this presentation was useful for you. In case of having any questions, suggestions related to my presentation, I would like to have your question, suggestion to as a comment in my video. دوستای عزیز، با امید از اینکه پرزنتیشن یا این ارائه درس مؤثر براتون واقع باشه در صورت داشتن سوالات، انتقادات، پیشنهادات در رابطه با جلساتی که من می داشته باشم آنلاین، خواهشاً از شما که نظرات، انتقادات، پیشنهاداتتون را در این جبین در ویدیوها کامنت بگذارین به عنوان نظر. انشاءالله که در برنامه‌های بعدی براتون ما در نظر میگیرم و تلاش و خدا بیش از حد میکنم تا جلسات مؤثر و خودتری با شما داشته باشم. فراموش نکنین که چینل ما را سابسکرایب بکنین و ویدیوهای ما را با دوستایتان هم شریک بسازین. تشکر از اینکه با ما بودین. سلام علیکم. Have a good day everyone. End broadcast. بند کردی؟